August is Love and Rockets month. This week, Kumar and Matt discuss Jaime Hernandez's The Love Bunglers in episode 440 from March 9th, 2015. Enjoy.
This is Kumar.
Yeah, this is Matt.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Kumar and Matt. We're in Melbourne. It's been like a year and a half, I think, since...
Probably has.
It was in November.
Yeah.
Since we last spoke. And we've been trying to get something on. And we've been hemming and hawing a lot. For some reason, we went back and forth a long time. Nobody could agree on what to talk about. And finally, we came around Love and Rockets. Now, we did 2 episodes on Love and Rockets on the show probably 2 or 3 years ago with Tom Spurgeon. And we kind of, at that time, I think maybe number 3 had come out of News Stories.
Oh, yep.
That was like the latest thing, like Browntown was the latest thing that had hit.
Yep.
And we hadn't seen the end of Love Bunglers. And it was kind of, after Browntown, it was like, well, he's not going to top that.
Yeah.
And he kind of did
and then,
the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, so they've been coming out with these news stories. They're supposed to be coming out annually. And as we were just talking about before we started recording, number 7 was supposed to be out in January. I think it was scheduled for January, and it hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
So we're lucky. We're not like super behind. But you can almost do an episode a year on these things that are coming out. Now, you were a bit worried that even when we agreed on this, then you kind of were backpedaling like, well, maybe everybody said everything about...
Well, especially Love Bunglers. There was a lot of dissection of that, really. And I actually, I read other people's analysis and sort of, the talk and chatter about it. And I was like, and that sort of was very illuminating for me. Like, there were a lot of things that maybe I'd sort of glossed over with it. And that actually, going back and rereading, you could see a lot of things, and just looking at simple panels of the story. But so I don't know. Did we decide what we were actually going to?
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about the Love Bunglers, but I'd like to talk about all 6 issues that are out so far too. A little bit about all of them, because when they started out, I think in the first 2. Jaime did he was doing that superhero thing, the Tie Girls.
Oh, yeah, yep.
And Gilbert's stuff it's getting stranger and more surreal, and people often compare him to David Lynch, but I think like Jodorowsky is a closer comparison because he goes really into really oddball stuff, and it's just very avant-garde, strange shapes. Can't even really tell what's going on a lot of the time. And there's one story in there that he did, which was a movie being made in Palomar, about Palomar, like loosely based on events there. And Fritzy was playing the Luba character.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was going on. Now, I don't know if I've missed a chunk of Palomar stuff, because I thought I was up to date, but like I think I'm way out, because I haven't read any of the Luba in America stuff. So I think I must have, like, for me it's hard to keep track of the kids and the granddaughters and who belongs to who and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's this episode which is going on in Palomar, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And it seems to be cutting back and forth to Killer, who is Guadalupe's daughter, and that's like actual stuff. And you don't really know which stuff is the movie stuff. And it wasn't until the next issue came out, I think 6, and there was a letter, and somebody wrote in and said, I love this, but I didn't understand what was going on and who these people were, and Gilbert had to explain, this was a movie that was being shot in Palomar about time.
It's another one of the Fritz B-grade films?
Yes, embedded into... Okay, so we got to mention that. So it's embedded into this story set in the present, but basically Gilbert's been doing all these graphic novels which are actually B-movies starring Luba's half-sister? Fritz.
Yeah.
Fritzy?
Yeah, Fritzy Ritz.
Right, Fritzy Ritz, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you've been following those, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's been about 5 to date. The last one was the first part of Maria M.
Okay.
And that's, I guess, like a film version of the Maria M character, and Fritz is playing her. That's
You mean Maria being
her mother?
Luba's mother? Fritz's mother too. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, forgive me if I get some of the genealogy wrong, because it's confusing. But I mean, so Killer is Luba's granddaughter. Yeah, right. So anyway, but then I think, he mentioned it like in that letter that and I think even in a few other places he's including these Fritz films in things like the Love and Rockets annual news stories, not just confining it to the pulp novels that are coming out once a year from Fantagraphics.
Because there's the King Vampire one too, which seems to be a movie that Killer's in.
Yeah, right.
Which is in there for like 50 pages in one of the issues as well.
Yeah, so I guess that's an offshoot of that.
Okay, so what's your feeling about? So you've read all of them.
Yeah.
So you're into them.
I mean that's the stuff. I like that stuff as much as I like, the most brilliant things that Jaime's done. Like I think sometimes Gilbert gets a bit of short shrift because he pursues those more aggressive, sexual, violent themes, aspects of his stories, but I like that he cuts loose and he has that kind of he just kind of has a punk attitude where he just doesn't care so much about maybe about what might offend and shock people in an overly PC society today. I don't know. We're talking about indie comics, so I don't know if the people that would take offense to these even know they exist. I doubt it. But he's really. I think he's maybe at a point now where he's in his, I presume, late 50s. And he's like, I'm just going to cut loose, and he's also working for multiple publishers now where. He sort of, I think he had dabbled with other publishers. Was it Vertigo?
Dark Horse and Vertigo,
Vertigo that did the first graphic novel, Sloth, I think. And he said that how that took him quite a while to put together because it was the first time I think he was chucking down 120 pages without serializing it anywhere and just, making one book. And I think now, I mean, that's got to have been a decade ago. And now he's probably at the point where he knows how to do that, how to plan out just one single book. And so he did. I mean, I haven't read them yet, but Lover Boys and Bumperhead. Lover Boys, I think, was Dark Horse, Bumperhead, Drawn and Quarterly. I think they've basically come out in the last year.
And Marble Season.
And Marble Season was Drawn and Quarterly. Before Bumperhead. So he's like those stories, and I say this without having read them, but I mean I've read Marble Season. That was something that I guess you would call an all ages comic, enjoyable for adults and kids, and maybe geared more towards that book market. I think it was published by someone else in other territories as well.
Okay,
if you're up with that sort of thing, but so he's channeling the more crazy stuff into the Love and Rockets news stories.
So this is like you're feeling this is filtered, like the craziest stuff goes here.
And I think
more controlled stuff.
Like he's maybe just thinking
going into the book market.
I don't know if there's any editors pulling strings going, hey, why don't you do this? I doubt it. But I think the people that read Love and Rockets are probably. There's probably new readers that come on, but then there are people that have been there since way back and are familiar with what he can do, I'm sure there's a legion of Birdland fans out there that are waiting for a sequel. But, he's doing, I think he's doing that stuff, in the pulp hardback novels and in here as well. And then, I mean, I like that he's gone back and he's sort of doing stuff in the sort of Palomar, or it seems like a fictional version of Palomar, because that that was a really sort of an eye-opener for me when I first read that.
Sure.
I never read it. Did you read it in the original series?
No.
Just the
paper, like the big, those large size trade paperbacks that came out with. I started with a couple of those, and I wasn't even reading them in order. And then there was those giant hardcovers that was where I read them straight through. But then I learned later that some stuff was actually left out of those bits and pieces.
Yeah, right.
I don't know about the Palomar, but definitely out of the Hopper's stuff, like Flies on the Ceiling isn't in there.
Yeah,
there's some stuff that didn't make it in.
Have you ever read the How to Read Love and Rockets guide that Fantagraphics have on?
No, that's like a book. It's not like. Or are you talking about the online one or there's a book out?
Well, actually, yeah, there is a reader now as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the How to Read Love and Rockets guide online, I found you start to get confused. Right. Even reading that.
Yeah.
You just got to read them in order, I think. Well, even then, because I always tell people, especially with Jaime, don't start with the first one because it starts with all the science fiction-y kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the art was different back then.
It was different.
A lot more sort of rendering and hatching and what have you. And it was nice, but what he's doing now, I think both of them, what they're doing now, they're sort of at their I'd hesitate to say at their peak, but they've really refined what they do and how they do it.
Jaime, I find I always say every issue is like, this is it. Like, this is the peak. Like, you cannot get better. The faces and the body language are just amazing.
Yeah.
And he stripped it down. Like, there's so few lines now.
That is the beauty of it, the economy of line, where he's just... It looks so simple, but, you know, you get such expression in the characters.
Yeah, and he's pretty much sticking to a grid most of the time. As well, but but I'm amazed. It does seem to get better every issue. I think though with the last two, because he finished Love Bunglers in number 4, and then 5 and 6 come out, and we get these new stories with Tonta, who I don't know if she showed up before, but Angel shows up as kind of a supporting player. She's like the high school sports coach. A gym teacher and a wrestler, and the Frogmouth Vivian shows up as a kind of a supporting player as well. And I feel, and it kind of goes back to the old punk stuff, like they're going to gigs, like these are young kids and they're going to gigs and stuff, and it's very much a throwback to the old stuff. I sort of felt like he didn't quite have those characters yet.
Yeah.
Like by the end of the end of the Maggie stories, it's like every line on her face has a meaning. And I feel like he's still kind of getting used to all these new characters that he's into now.
It's funny because I don't think I had seen these characters before, and so they've just kind of he's just sort of jumped in sort of like the middle of the story with them in a way. There's no sort of massive introduction or anything.
No.
I mean that's the
but
way.
there kind of wasn't with the old stuff.
No. Oh well, isn't it? Yeah. I mean that was the thing. I read it somewhere before I was actually aware of it, but and I think it might have been from the suggestion of Gary Goff, but no captions or there's no later or that sort of thing, and that's something I've always loved about it, about their stories, how they'll switch from location or time period without all that sort of obtrusive captiony sort of stuff.
Although with Gilbert, because he'll change scenes 2 or 3 times on one page, it can get crazy. Like you really gotta be focusing. Yeah. You can't really even if you backtrack, you can get a bit lost.
I like with his. I'm looking at a page now that people who are listening can't see, but where normally, sometimes he does sort of silent panels that sort of indicate, moving to a new place or time, even just like panels without people in them, just scenes, which I've always thought was really cool. A way, especially with the spooky sci-fi fantasy stuff, he really sets the atmosphere with that stuff.
Oh, I actually love the one where with those, they seem to be human researchers on this alien planet. Yeah. And this guy he goes out and he has sex with one of these aliens.
Was that the new stories?
It was in no, it was in maybe in the number 1 or something. It was great. It's in 1 or 2.
I remember the.
Oh man, that one was crazy. And then he comes back to Earth, and the girl dresses up like the alien form, so they can have sex.
Oh, that's right. Is that like a Fritzy film?
Yeah, because she was the alien.
Yeah.
Isn't in 1 or 2? Maybe it's in 3. I don't know.
Yeah, I know the one you mean. And it was.
Oh yeah, it's in 3. Yeah. And then the alien's husband or mate comes back to get revenge or whatever, and kills the female after it's had sex with the human.
That's right. Yeah,
and the kids are coming. Yeah, so this guy has sexually assaulted the kids and says it's like no different. Oh, he's murdered them as well. And then they go back to Earth. Now I think this is the best of the.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might have had the most straightforward. This happens and this happens and this happens in the others, and maybe that's why.
Yeah.
There was no bonkers imagery that I really couldn't process. Okay, so out of all that, do you have a Gilbert or Jaime preference?
That's so hard. I used to actually be massively more swayed towards Gilbert, even though I love Jaime's stuff. I feel like I have to say that. You know, I don't know. I don't think you have to like one better than the other.
Yeah,
you know?
there's
I
true.
If I could just
that
say
is true. Yeah.
But I think what I liked about Gilbert was just the cutting loose, like Birdland as a comic. It's just a really insane comic. Even, all the crazy sex part of it aside, it's just it's just a really crazy story, and I just think he sort of puts all the stuff out here, especially the ending of that, which I think it's safe to give a spoiler for something that's quite old.
Yeah.
Where there's this sort of gender reversal, swapping and sort of thing that carries on. That's not all really fully explained, but I don't know. I just can't imagine anyone else that was doing anything like that around the time that came out, and it probably got quite dismissed as just being another porn comic for Fantagraphics to keep afloat. But I still go back and reread.
It was probably
Birdland.
It was probably the best of the sex comics that Fantagraphics. They're the most memorable. Yeah. Like I don't really remember.
I know
there
was some European reprinted stuff.
They did the Frank Thorne stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And there was the Ho Chi Anderson one, I Want to Be Your Dog, which is didn't even have that much sex in it.
Yeah. I liked Ironwood.
Yeah, that was a fantasy one, right?
Although I think, Bill Willingham, but I think he just sort of either got tired of it or whatever, was doing other things, and then just wrapped it up in an issue or two, and that was done.
Right.
But anyway, what was the point of what I was saying? Oh, you were talking about
Gilbert versus Jaime. Yeah.
But then, I don't know. And I mean, that's what I really like about Gilbert, is that cutting loose and that sort of like, I'm just going to put anything that I want to see on the page. Yeah. And audience be damned. And I think he's got enough. He probably doesn't think like that, but he's got enough.
I think he might.
Maybe, yeah.
Anyway,
he said something really fascinating in a written interview about how he draws a few pages of a story and puts it aside with the idea that he might come back to it in 5 years or even 10 years later, and then he'll look at finishing it later. But it's just like, I think he's just really thinking about his output. I often think about people, professional cartoonists that are in their 50s and maybe 60s. They've got to be thinking about, well, what time have I got and what work do I want to finish? And like Seth has talked about this, I've probably got this many books that I can complete in my lifetime or before I start losing my drawing facilities. So I often wonder if that's something that Gilbert's cognizant of, is like, well, I want to get bang, I want to get these done. So but that was a fascinating thing, saying that he'd maybe just draw a few things. And I think he's probably so consistent with his style that he's still going to be able to pick up those stories and finish them.
Yeah, that's true too.
But Jaime, I think, probably gives me more of a gut punch with some of those.
I think now,
those scenes.
I think Love Bunglers and Brown Town. Yeah. I always preferred Gilbert before.
Really? Okay. Because I think we're in the minority.
Yeah, I think we are. And then somehow I thought like Jaime's was the prettier stuff.
Yeah.
But it never some of the stories hit me, like the death of Speedy.
Yeah.
Flies on the ceiling, stuff like that. But until Love Bunglers, and this was also changed, Love Bunglers was the thing that changed my mind about another thing about comics in general, which is I always feel like it has to be, a thing has to kind of stand alone to really be worthwhile. But Love Bunglers was the one where I said, well, actually, maybe you should go back and read like all these other Love and Rockets comics because it's worth it to get to this point.
Coming soon. The podcast that dares to tackle one of the greatest pop culture sensations of the 20th century.
Holy memory bank, you're right.
One dynamic duo takes on another as Tim and Paul examine both the history and the memories of a classic TV show.
I shouldn't wish to attract attention.
Tune in soon for
To the Bat Balls.
So anyway, let's talk about Love Bunglers a bit. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
So it's over 2 issues. It's over 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Both times it's interrupted mid-story. So there's Love Bunglers Part 1, and then there's Brown Town, and then there's Part 2, and then in issue 4 there's Part 3, and then Return for Me,
Yeah.
and then Part 4, which is the finale of it. So he's used this 100-page structure, which he's sharing with his brother. I haven't read it in collected form. I think it's been colored as well. So I don't know.
I don't know if it's colored, like the hardcover.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure it's black and white.
Oh, it's still black and white. Okay.
I can put color on it.
I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I haven't read it, so I don't know what it reads like in that specific format.
I've read it.
Oh, you have read
really
it?
well. Yeah.
So it's smashed up. So you've got you've got Part 1, Browntown, Part 2, Part 3, Return for Me, Part 4.
Yeah, I can't remember specifically, but I think it is in the same order that it was in the books.
Right.
So you sort of get that. I guess that sort of punch in the gut from Return for Me, and then basically the end.
Okay, so we should lay out a bit about what's happening here. In Part 1, it starts off. It seems like it's a typical Maggie kind of story. She's going around town, going about business. She has a couple of dates. She's been out with Reno for some reason, which we later learn she's trying to find a sperm donor for for Hopi and her partner.
Yeah.
And you always thought it was going to be Maggie and Hopi in the end, and it's not at all. And the Love Bunglers, I remember when I read after Browntown and after Part 2, on that episode I was saying how I was feeling frustrated that Maggie had not been able to settle down after 30 years of comics or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So things were kind of gearing up.
Yeah.
So, and also there's this homeless guy that's been hanging around and kind of maybe stalking Maggie a little bit, and we don't know what that bit's about. And she's been having this she kind of finally rejects Ray Dominguez for good. And Ray was always kind of my favorite guy. And I don't know why. I'm not like him, I don't think in any way. But somehow I connected, especially older Ray, not younger. When he was an artist, not as much. But somehow when he got older...
When they did the US size comics, and they did a few issues where it was kind of just centered around him, and there was a lot of sort of... I don't know if you call it sort of noir-y, sort of like shadowy pages and just with his sort of in monologue and that was when I really sort of thought, I really liked the character and what Jaime was doing with his story there of the older Ray. And they going back to you saying there's the guy that is sort of hanging around. He's a bit of a bit of a loose unit maybe. Seems to be a bit aggressive. He shares there's a scene he shares with Maggie but they don't. I think they say something, but they're not.
He says something, but she doesn't look at him.
Yeah,
like, she gives him a sandwich. I can't remember what, but she's like, he's been hanging around an apartment. She's the landlord. She's like, or she's a superintendent or whatever. She's like, sorry, you can't hang around here. And she kind of passes something to him without looking at him, so he doesn't see his face.
Yeah. And he just kind of walks off.
Right, which becomes crucial because then it's interrupted by Browntown, where we learn that this guy is Maggie's estranged brother, Calvin.
Yeah.
And we learned that there was this throwaway panel from apparently it was in issue 7 of the original Love and Rockets, where we learned that Maggie had gone away for 3 years with her family, and her dad had cheated on his mother, and they came back to Hoppers. And we also learned in that issue 7 that Maggie was one of 6 kids.
Yeah.
And what happened was, over the years, Jaime filled in 5 of those kids. And he forgot that he had written 6 until, I think, around this stage.
Yeah.
So he came back.
What a way to do it, though. Like
usually when you fill in, like if you think of like a superhero comic where you're filling in some background line of dialogue somebody said in 1963, you're like, it's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
This is an amazing pickup. So he's filling in this gap. What happened in those 3 years, and who was that missing brother? And I think they mentioned the brother at one thing, that he ran away from home at 16 or something. And that's all we ever knew about this 6th guy.
I didn't know anything about.
I didn't remember any of this either. I didn't really find out about this until later. I was like, oh, this has all this groundwork has been laid. I didn't realize that. It doesn't really matter.
No.
So anyway, we find out this guy's Calvin had been her brother. And they had moved out to this town, and so as Jaime said in this interview, he thought that Love Bunglers was light. It was a bit too light and fluffy, and he needed some more substance, so he put it in Browntown. So this is this amazing story where they move out to the middle of nowhere, this town where nothing's going on. It's basically like Jaime's Palomar. And we get the kind of backstory about the infidelity of her father and how she ended up coming back and stuff, and because of all that. But we get Calvin's story, which is his amazing, horrific tale of serial sexual abuse by this other boy in the town, and then Calvin ends up at the very end of killing this kid. Enraged because he's afraid that he's going to go after his sisters or his mother next. Kill this guy, and then it's like it's the day they're about to leave to drive back, and it's like, okay, Calvin's not coming because this thing's happened, and they drive off, and that's kind of how Calvin's story happens. Okay, now there's a lot of ways we can go with this story. All right, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thoughts were like, I mean, it's a really, I guess in a way, a traumatic story, and I was just horrified. Like I think I probably gasped out loud when I read certain pages, because it's just like, well, if I missed something, like everything, it just hits you like a hammer. It's so, it's terrifying to read what you're reading, because it's like, it's very real, and then it's the way it's laid out. You're like, I kind of know people, like some of the people in the story. They just seem so real, And this is talking about a character that, like you said, was just kind of a quick reference in an older comic, and now he's fleshing out him and that sort of backstory at that time. So I think I probably reread it a bunch of times. The first time when I first got it, that sort of covered that part, and then I can't remember, was Return for me in that first.
It's in the 4th. So
that was the first part as well. It concluded in the 5th.
It concluded in 4. 4. Started in 3, concluded in 4.
Okay. Yeah, because it was the same with Return for me. Like when I first read that, I didn't know who the character was, the childhood friend, and I wasn't sure if that was something that I'd missed from obviously a comic I never read, or it was just being introduced. It was a new thing now.
She was there
Oh, okay.
But I don't really remember. I don't really remember anything about her, because some of those panels, in return for me, is also. So we get back to Love Bunglers for a bit in the present day, and then we get this flashback to this friend of Maggie's that she'd left behind in Hoppers, and she was writing her letters and stuff. And Maggie comes back, but they become kind of estranged because Maggie's family's gone through this divorce. Nobody seems to really know what happened with Calvin.
Yeah.
And even her parents might know. They just know he killed this kid, and obviously he's a minor. He's not going to go to jail for life or whatever. But they don't really know exactly what's happened. But anyway, Maggie has become distant from her friend, whose name I can't remember right now. Is it Hedda or something? Anyway, it'll be in Browntown because that's where she's writing her all the letters.
Right,
Right, but some of those panels were like almost reproduced from that old Love and Rockets issue 7. Like they're very similar. So that girl was in it.
Okay.
In some capacity. As a friend.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't need to know that.
Yeah, no.
Like when I first read it, I was just like, well, it's either something that I've missed, or I just automatically knew that. Oh, okay, so it's a friend from her childhood, and then. But the way that he told that story of them being estranged and then it's kind of making up again, and then also just I think it's told from her friend's point of view.
Yeah.
Initially, and well, for that first part, and then it's.
Well, it's the whole thing because she gets cut off at the end.
Yeah, but it's like she's so happy when they kind of.
Yeah.
Like, and she's it's just so beautifully done the way that he sort of depicted the emotions of this teenage girl, I guess.
Yeah,
and
this is also it's interesting too because he's gone the completely opposite direction where the other stuff has no captions.
Yeah,
and is all dialogue.
Yeah,
or this first person narration is all captions and there's no. Did I just reverse myself? This one's all. Narrative captions, first-person narration, and no dialogue, and it's a completely different approach to.
Yeah, it's like
there's a huge amount of information in a compact amount of space.
Yeah, I mean, it's all sort of like an internal monologue, and it harkens back to really old comics where it was just a panel, a grid, and then some text underneath. Yeah. And but I mean, that's just the perfect way to do it. I think if it had been all just. Speech bubbles and communication, it would have been. It would not have maybe had so much impact.
Yeah, I agree.
Like it's
completely. Well, also to spoil the ending, which we have to do.
You need to put something at the very beginning of this. There's a bunch of.
We've already spoiled it. The reveal of Calvin and
stuff.
People
should read these before they listen to any of our babbling. Not knowing what's in the stories. Made them so much more powerful,
Yeah, that's so. Anyway, at the end, she gets hit. She says, I have to be there for Maggie always because I know Maggie needs me."
Yeah.
And then she's hit by a car, and that's the end. Like mid-sentence,
yeah.
It's an amazing moment where mid-sentence she's being killed by a car, and that's why we've never seen that character since.
Yeah. That was the other thing I thought because as you're reading it, like, man, the bond, the friendship between these girls is so powerful. Why isn't she in the later stories? Well, when Maggie's an adult, and obviously,
right. Okay. Also, there's a thing in there about Calvin sees the sun as being blue, and it's even on the cover of number 3. There's a blue sun, and you see that when he's an adult as being part of his mental illness because he goes through the streets. It's part of almost the climax. He's like, "Hey, can you see the sun up there? It's blue," and he's going crazy. But I'm trying to remember. He mentioned it once when he was a kid too. He looked up, and I can't remember if that was before or after the first incident of being sexually abused. I'm wondering if there was something mentally. I should have noted that. Mentally at the beginning, or
I don't know, but I know. Isn't when he's first hanging out with the kids? It might be something else, but there's sort of a reference to being out in the outdoors.
I think he tries to point it out to somebody else or something. I won't be able to find it.
No, I can't remember, but I do remember that striking cover and just sort of, seeing that sort of blue glimmer up the top there and thinking, it was such a sort of an unusual thing.
It's right before, just before the first time he's raped. He says, "Do you think the sun is yellow or blue?"
Yeah.
One of the first days I moved here, I looked up and the sun was blue, but nobody believed me. So there's something already there.
Yeah, I don't know the significance of that, but
that's fascinating.
But I do, I mean, that was when I saw that. Like, I probably paid more attention to that than what the kids were on the cover. But
Okay, so we come back to Love Bunglers.
Yeah.
Back in the present, and Calvin has this freak out on the street. It seems like it seems like Maggie and Ray are not happening. It's like, see you later, let's meet for lunch sometime. But then we get this parallel pages where they seem to be coming towards each other. And these pages are laid out in this amazing way where they're... so it's one page where they're kind of facing each other. They're sitting in bed, and it seems like they're almost coming together. But then Ray sees Calvin. He tries to calm him down. Calvin freaks out, grabs a brick, and attacks Ray. Then we get a flash... We get some amazing flashbacks to both their lives. They each get a 9-panel grid on each page from childhood to present day for each character. Get Ray in the hospital after Speedy died. Just some amazing throwbacks. And then we get a flash forward. Maggie's a bit older. She doesn't know what happened to Ray after that day. She's just like, that jerk never called me again, or whatever. Then she finds out that he's been seriously mentally in the attack, like he has no memory, or he's sleeping a lot. Then we get another flash forward, Maggie's bought a garage, just like all coming together, and like, how many pages has it been?
I don't think we'd ever seen Maggie at this age.
No. This is older because she's heavier too. And then she's a bit lighter again. She's running a garage. She's been trying to start a garage. Hopi has managed to find a donor for him somewhere, and they have a kid, and the kid's a few years old. And Maggie babysits for him sometimes. And then we discover that Maggie and Ray are actually together, and Ray's kind of able to think again, and he's got some of his memory back, and sometimes some of it's so patchy, he doesn't know who actually hit him. They have a feeling it was somebody he knew, and she's like, I love you, and they kiss, and it's the most perfect ending of the entire history of Love and Rockets in 5-6 pages here. It's astonishing.
It happened. You get that attack with when Calvin attacks Ray, and then you're like, oh, this is starting to look pretty serious. Serious. It's not just like a brawl. And then it got into the sort of flashback or the pivotal moments of their lives, and on first read, I'm like, what is he showing us here? What is he trying to tell us? It's like, it's just such a powerful sequence in the comic.
It's all coming to a head.
And then you're like, I mean, my first thought was, oh, Ray never survived. He didn't,
because even she meets somebody that knew Ray, and he's like, oh no, he says you guys haven't talked, so he knows he's alive, but it's like you should call his sister, and you don't really know. And the amazing thing to me too was, even though this is only the entire history of Love and Rockets in 5 or 6 pages, there's a moment where Maggie drops off Hopi's kid back to her at her house. She's got this kind of nice suburban home or whatever. But there's so many great character moments. Even this kid telling his mom to stop laughing and covering her mouth. It's just such a he's still stopping to smell the roses, and really delineate the personalities of these characters in the dialogue. The dialogue's very tight, short, but very precise. And as always, the art's just amazingly stripped down to pure, powerful essentials.
And then you get the sort of kicker of the last page where
she finally got what she wanted. And it was like, that's what I wanted too for Maggie after a million years.
And Ray,
and Ray,
So I mean, we had that point. That was number 5.
That was 4.
Right.
And then we've got the 2 with Tonta in them.
Okay. And then so he's sort of gone.
You still had to start from scratch, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think there was anywhere else to go.
No.
It was the most perfect finale.
Yeah, and it's, like he's got these characters that are part of that story, but now he's sort of telling their story, or a story, and their lives sort of off to the side. So, long may they reign. These, I know he's hinted at they would like to maybe drop the annual because it's. It's once a year, or if you take last year, it was not, it didn't appear, but and maybe try and do, 3 smaller things through the year.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's going to happen, but
I think I think I might have mentioned this last time we did Love and Rockets. I feel like the market kind of keeps forcing them into these, like they had to. I feel like they were forced out of the magazine size into a standard comic. Easier to shelf for retailers, and I feel like they were forced out of that into the 100-page annual because of the bookstore market or whatever. So it's hard to see them coming out of it again.
No, well, there's not much of a market there for single issues, on a wider scale.
I think even the 100 pages a year it's kind of amazing that they're doing it. In that way, and nobody else is really doing. I can't think of anybody else that's doing just like 100-page serial. A year.
I mean, there's a few of that sort of old crowd that have found a format that they're gonna. I guess Seth has settled on that, or is he just gonna keep shaking up a bit?
I don't know. Like Tomine is still putting out single issues, but like once a year or something.
But I think, I remember buying my first collection of 32 stories when I was a teenager. I'm turning 40 this year. And I know the single issues are still in the teens, I think. Obviously he's had a big break to do certain other things, but it intrigues me how the indie cartoonists of that sort of time, how they can sort of find what will work for them in this new modern age.
Well, I find this is something I talk about on the show all the time, but there was a time when you could go into a comic shop and buy an indie comic for $5. And you can't really, for the most part, you can't do that anymore. You got to go in there and get some $15, $20 trade paperback. Peter Bagg's another guy that's kind of really frustrated with the graphic novel because he prefers the single issues as well. And he's still exploiting it because he did Apocalypse Nerd a few years ago, and it had these backup stories called Founding Fathers Funnies about the founding fathers in the 1700s or whatever of the states, and none of that stuff got reprinted in the trade paperback. He's still kind of trying to. That's the format he prefers. Is the single issue with a bunch of stuff in it, like Weirdo, used to be, or even his own neat stuff or stuff like that. So
I lament that. Right now it's really fun to go to a boot sale or something, and just there'll be piles of comics from the 90s, and not necessarily all the direct. You'll find runs of really interesting, cool comics, and even earlier. But in 10 or 20 years' time, you're not going to find similar equivalent of this era because it doesn't really exist, It's all beautiful.
That's right.
Books.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people that buy these books, they buy them with the intention of keeping them. It's not such a ephemeral object.
That's right. It's not disposable at all.
It's just sad. I mean, I've got a kinship with them, but I'll shout out for Retrofit Comics. They're doing their 10 or 11 single issue comics each year. Indie cartoonists, and I think they're still trying to figure out the way to make that absolutely work for itself. Working outside of say Diamond and but it's got to be tough out there.
So I think Jaime kind of mastered it for Love Bunglers. I think this was the right format for it. I haven't read the trade paperback, but I thought it was working fine.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going to go in the future, but
well, I guess I presume Fantagraphics will collect the 2 stories he's done after Love Bunglers.
Maybe Thai Girls was the one they colored.
Oh, could be too.
Yeah, when they collected it.
Yeah, I haven't read that one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts?
Oh, if anyone's got this far through us talking, and you haven't read these books, you really should read them.
Yeah. Okay, for sure. And number 7 should be out
now,
very shortly.
Very soon. Yeah. Available from all the usual places.
Okay. Cool. Excellent.
All right.
Love and Rockets is published by Fantagraphics. You can help the Deconstructing Comics family of podcasts by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics, and go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, to shop on Amazon to support the show, and to find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode there or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. That's also the address for submitting your own comics work for possible inclusion on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. The final installment of Love and Rockets Month will be out in 2 weeks, featuring Kum's 2017 interview with Jaime Hernandez. But next week, a new episode. Kum has procured an interview with none other than former Marvel editor-in-chief Jim Shooter, who will be appearing at Toronto Fan Expo August 24th to 27th, 2023. So don't miss this talk with a legendary writer and editor next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.